Hi, this is Damien AtHope, and I'm an Axiological Atheist, and I'm here with a guest. Could you please tell us your name and what kind of atheist you are?
My name is Darwin Award. I'm originally from Vancouver, Canada, and I am, I'm an optimistic atheist.
Right on. And so, can you please tell us what you mean by that, like how it impacts you?
Yeah, so, for me, I experienced it as a sort of like unburdening, like liberation, and, it's good to be at a time where it seems like it's on the rise, people questioning religion and being more comfortable self-identifying as atheists or non-believers. And, I understand there's a lot of baggage around the term. So, like, I know people that in the closet atheists, that they will share their beliefs in private, but they're not, they still like feel like there's something distasteful about sort of slapping it on your bio or whatever. So, I'm optimistic in the sense of it feels like, recent political events notwithstanding, there's a, raising of the consciousness around, rationality being celebrated and superstition being, suspect.
Right on. So, did you always feel the atheist conclusion was something that you agree with, or were you persuaded by religion? And also, could you tell us how you were raised?
Sure. So I was raised by, let's say, like New Age spiritualists. So we never had to go to church, but we did go to like ashrams and yoga retreats. And, it was all, the message was always like many paths to the non-specific divine. Like there's an energy, spirituality is like communing with that sort of transcendent force that's mysterious, that every religion has their own like local cultural twist on, but don't take any of the specific claims of scriptures or organized religions too seriously, because the details are probably going to be wrong, but they're all sort of like magnetically orienting towards something that's real, that you can discover through practices like meditation or communing with nature or whatever. So, I definitely was not raised in an atheist family, but I also wasn't raised in a religious family. There was just a lot of credulity and belief in like a something or other without too much detail. I up until 10 years ago, I was not claiming atheist. I was agnostic. I considered myself spiritual. I used to do like meditation classes that had a pretty strong supernaturalist dimension, where your like soul is traveling in the astral plane and all this stuff. And, part of me was like, yeah, this seems a little like suspect, but at the same time, I was sort of, I was open to the possibility of, okay, well, let's see what it feels like if I deliberately like take down my skepticism response, and that's what they're telling me is necessary to really get it, so I'll try that. In retrospect, I feel like there was some deception going on. I mean, the whole thing is like designed to hoodwink you into believing the credos. But I also feel there's a lot of positive to be gained from some of the practices in terms of just like psychological stability or compassion raising or whatever. So it was about 10 years ago. It was like a work project, basically. I had to do this rap album, like celebrating Darwin and explaining natural selection. And over the course of the research, where I really wanted to get the details of evolutionary theory right, I came across all of these sort of Darwinian explanations for phenomena that I previously would have pretty strongly argued were sort of beyond the purview of science, that sort of explained experiences I had that I had chalked up to the supernatural. And by the end of that process, I was like, in all intellectual honesty, my last remaining barriers to complete atheism have fallen, because these arguments just seem so persuasive and logical. Therefore, basically agnosticism at that point was like a form of political correctness. I was saying agnostic because I didn't want to get into arguments about whether atheists, were degrading society, or whether it was inherently insulting to religious people to claim atheist or whatever. So, it was basically like, I was just being Canadian. I was being polite. Like, oh, you have your beliefs. Maybe they're right. I don't think so, but I'll give it, and so at a certain point I was like, it's kind of bullshit. And also when you read about persecution of atheists and the sort of need for solidarity and to sort of redeem the label against the sort of outright hostility that it generates, I'm kind of a provocateur as well. So then I was like, you know what? I'm atheist. Let's have the conversation. That was like 2009, 2010.
Right on. So, I kind of had the similar experience. When I decided God wasn't true, I, some reason, still thought magic was. I don't mean magic, but I mean supernatural. I thought that ghosts could, and souls, and I thought, there could even be an afterlife. I mean, because I know it's hard, because to me the problem is God beliefs require anism, or magical thinking beliefs, but it doesn't the same way, it doesn't match the same way. In other words, once you lose God, you could still have anism, magical thinking beliefs. I mean, those do not require a God.
And there's like fully coherent versions of Buddhism and Taoism, and they're full of reincarnation and spirits, and there's no sort of single deity behind it all. It's just a world pop. It's like Harry Potter, the like hidden magic is everywhere if you learn how to look for it.
And the same thing kind of happened with, you said a rap album. For me, it was my book. I've been writing a book, so because I wanted to explain, atheism, and so I decided I wanted to go, when religions start. And so the further back I kept looking, the more I started realizing this is all nonsense. Even the soul thing. It's like, okay, let's just say we have a soul. When did that happen? When in evolution? Because now I believe in evolution. When in evolution did magic occur, and why? And why?
Well, the Catholics have an answer to that. The doctrine of installment, somewhere between our most recent primate ancestors and the development of Homo sapiens. God sort of like, popped the lid and added some extra soul dust in there.
That's fine. I didn't know that, so thanks.
Yeah, that's the official Catholic doctrine. Evolution is true, but God gave us souls, and that's why we're different from animals.
Well, I didn't believe in a God, so I didn't have that. But I'm saying, because I stopped believing in God, but I still believed in souls. But then when all of a sudden I realized, if everything is natural, I don't believe in a God, how in the heck did magic happen? I just started thinking, I started, like you say, you start thinking, wow. And so it really made me understand, also how important it is that even when people that are somewhat reasonable can still have all kinds of biased beliefs and stuff. And so that's when, I started like you, I realized, wow, we need to speak out. We need to tell people. We need to teach people, because, otherwise then I'm doing the world a disfavor, that allowing this to keep going. So I really appreciate, I really appreciate, you saying that, how you came to more of a full atheism is very similar to how I did.
Yeah, I think some of the arguments in the Four Horsemen books, like Sam Harris's End of Faith, really had a big impact on me. And it's funny because, in that book he talks about, how you could reject all of religion and still have a spirituality. Some skeptics and atheists sort of came down hard on him for embracing some aspects of the Eastern mystical tradition in that book. But, that was the point at which I was like, okay, no God, no faith, but like you, maybe some kind of magic or like consciousness infused universe possibility or something like that. So that I've sort of like, that died harder for me as well. But I really was sort of fully persuaded by the argument that the sort of moderate religious, liberal religious, or agnostic view gives a lot of shelter to all of the sort of atrocities that the umbrella of religion carries with it. And if you don't have a clear answer to, the divine inspiration is a bullshit explanation for everything, good and bad, then you don't have an answer to why it's not a valid explanation for doing something bad. You know what I mean? So like that's where the moderate religious defenses started to crumble for me. And I was like, no, we just have to critique false claims across the board, even if they seem benign. and even if the people seem really nice that are making them, because if you don't have that benchmark, then you've got no answer to the horrible stuff.
I agree. If we and I consider myself a truth seeker. If we don't start with truth, then I don't think there's any hope. Because everything then has to be not just suspect, but has to be doubted hard. Because if we don't know what's true, then how can we really do anything? So I find that to be something that, I call it I have a style called the hammer of truth, where I use ontology, epistemology, and axiology. And ontology is like what something is, whenever someone talks about something. And then the epistemology is like, how do you know that? And axiology is, why is what you're offering even valuable? Because you could say that manure is real. Well, that doesn't mean that it's healthy to eat. So you can say sometimes people mix facts with and that's not really that valuable.
So it's like truth, knowledge, and values it would be those three. I mean, you're I'm having to like access my my archives of philosophical jargon to stay with you, but I hear what you're saying for sure. And it's funny how like you worked on a book and that like caused your thinking to evolve, and I worked on an album and it was the same. And a funny thing happened recently, which is that my most recent record, which is the Rap Guide to Consciousness, ended up having a lot of Bayesian probability content to it, right, because that's where analysis of cognition and perception in the brain seems to really be converging. And in a way, that's leaned me slightly back towards agnosticism, in the sense that I do agree with the Bayesian analysis that science doesn't give us absolute certainty of anything. It just gives us relative confidence based on the preponderance of the evidence. But it's really like almost like a categorical mistake to say you have 100% certainty. So I'm not a 100% certain atheist. I'm an agnostic in the sense of, I don't absolutely know. I just think it's vanishingly unlikely that there's a God. But I'm also like, I have to sort of, in principle, be open to some evidence overturning my beliefs, and that's what it means to be a Bayesian and sort of make a probabilistic assessment of the world. It's just that, from what I can see, the chances are vanishingly small, but they're not zero. So, I think Dawkins kind of does that like a 1 to 7 scale of atheism, and he's a 6 or something like that. I think that, people that say atheists are as dogmatic as religious people in their certainty might have a valid criticism of a sort of closed-mindedness of mindset, although you're not just going to like believe things because people say them. But I think agnosticism in practice, if not in principle, is actually a good way to be in the world. So this is like this was like a pendulum swing for me, but it's not swinging all the way back. It's like, okay, what kind of atheist am I? I'm like 97% atheist, but that 3% means a lot to people who are ready to engage in dialogue, as long as they don't think you're absolutely fixed in your beliefs. And I want atheists to be more, I want it to be a more reasonable position than religion. So you can't come with the same kind of like dogmatic fervor, as a sort of like strategic thing. That's what I find engaging with people, like, okay, so why do you believe that? And what led you in the course of your life development to be certain about that, and what kind of evidence would change your mind, and those kinds of things. People are only ready to have that conversation if they think that you're like ready to have it too. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't totally agree. I mean, I understand your position. I am an ignostic with an I, not an A. An ignostic with an I says that the concept of God has never been validated. It preponderates things that are not in reality. It offers claims that are not substantiated even to itself. In other words, tell me what a definition of God is. Then tell me, how do you know that definition? And what makes that definition have any realistic qualities? In other words, there is no such thing as unlimited. There's no, right? I mean, in this world, in
mathematics there is.
Well, no, there's not. There's only a hypothesis that things can keep going, but that the fact is that I'm talking about in science. In other words, a star has a limitation. Even a star even dies. But so we don't have a conception of something that does not die. So when you say that, I'm saying that they're God is offered as a group of non-realistic qualities that have no basis in even being asserted, right? So every one of them, and all loving, totally ridiculous concept. All forgiving, totally ridiculous concept. Every one of the concepts that make up what a God could be are offered as non-realistic things. So no claim offered is valid. So we don't. In other words, if you offer a hypothesis that your socks are being taken out of your dryer by space aliens, that is a hypothesis. Then you have to say, how reasonable is that? What could there be other? The fact is that you say your one song, God of the Gaps, you address the fact that there isn't. See, the fact is there actually isn't even a gap, because what is offered is not a realistic thing. Then the person offering it has no way of justifying their claim to know such a thing. So you have multiple levels. The thing itself is not valid. The ones offering it have no justification for why such assertions are even offered. In other words, how do you claim to know what you know? Well, the Bible's invalid. The Hindu scriptures are invalid. They're not accurate to historical facts. They don't match archaeological data. In other words, when you say that science doesn't know something, well, we do know that there is a rock. We do know the rock is made up of certain elements. That is not in doubt. There is no doubt for that. There is no doubt that the Nile River cannot fit in my pocket. You don't need to see it. You know that's a fact. It cannot happen. I'm a rationalist, so I don't agree with that we have to always appeal to I don't know. Because if that was true, you also don't know that you don't know. You're simply unknowingly assuming.
Yeah, well, I think if you don't know that you don't know, then you still don't know. And I think the sort of like simulation arguments and possibilities, actually do give you that sort of tiny sliver of uncertainty about whether the Nile could fit in your pocket, because we don't even know whether we're here or not. And epistemic uncertainty is the foundational condition of the brain and of any organism. It's like assessment of reality is probabilistic. So I think I don't disagree with any of the claims that you just made. I'm actually more interested in a conversation about like the strategies of rhetoric that do and don't work. And I think like this is the first time I ever heard of an agnostic atheist, but my initial reaction is that's not going to be a fruitful approach to converting people that want to talk about their belief in God and why they have them. Because if your first starting point is the concept of God you put forward is invalid, and they want to tell you all the reasons why they think it's actually a personal, like a perfectly rational interpretation of the state of the world and everything, and you say, well, your definition is invalid, all loving is valid. Like, I think there are valid, but not sort of like, not empirically defensible, but like logically defensible versions of using God to explain things. As long as you don't like know all the facts. But I kind of just, I've like had a lot of conversations with religious people and just trying to like figure out what works and what doesn't and what gets them engaged in the conversation. And I think that like the foundational concept of God is invalid would not be a good way to get those conversations going.
That would be to you. I've actually done tons of outreach in the streets. I go to colleges and I've gone and debated people at churches. I do know how. You know what it does? We don't allow magic. Period.
Yeah,
End of story.
I'm all for that.
But you know what we do? We do it with an air of wanting to teach, not wanting to win. I don't go with wanting to win. I simply go with wanting to teach. And what I do is, in other words, my way of critiquing is, like I said, the hammer of truth: ontology, epistemology, axiology. So like this one guy tells me, hey man, I saw God. I go, what? He goes, I go, you saw God? How did you see God? He goes, well, I was on mushrooms. Okay, so you took a natural thing that we know has a drug component. Yeah, but you see, this drug gets you to heaven. I go, well, how do you know it was heaven? I mean, even if you say that you went somewhere, how are you sure it was heaven? Well, because it was all this, light. Okay, so it could have been something else. So to me, we just keep digging. So I said, so do you think that LSD, would be the same as eating mushrooms? Could they both get you to God? Because I'm trying to show him the unreasonableness of his claim, but I'm going to do it by digging into the claim. So, no, only mushrooms. Why mushrooms? Because they're natural. So do natural mushrooms or anything natural component. How about marijuana? That's natural. Would that get you to God? No, only mushrooms. And so I just started digging away at what his claims are. So in a sense, I think it's, for me, what my position is has to do less than how I interact with other people.
Well, what you just did right there is really different than what you just said to me a couple minutes ago. Because your answer was, how do you know, and how can we be sure who weren't there? And, what's the probability of it being something that's hallucinogenic, rather than a real encounter with the supernatural? Like, those are all really good sort of street epistemology, empirical questions. But you didn't say, by the way, when you say the mushrooms are a path to heaven, your entire definition of heaven is flawed and invalid, and therefore even the claim that you made in the first place was incoherent. Therefore, why would there be even a point in asking empirical questions about how to interpret the experience when you've just invalidated the conceptual framework from the beginning? You see what I'm saying? So, what you claimed before was your strategy is not what you just said you did.
No, hold on. I didn't say my strategy was to tell people that I do not believe in God. In that way, I said.
No, but you said the concept of God is an incoherent concept.
And that is still true. That is true whether if I ever voice it out loud. It's still true. That and I do use that as a method. I know that it's an incoherent thing. And thus I dig into the incoherency until the person that I'm talking to realizes also it is an incoherent thing. And I have debates with philosophers all the time about the God. And I go, what is a God? Tell me, what is a God? And they go, God, when you say that, what do you mean? What do you mean by, because they'll say God is love. Well, hold on. Well, what's a God? That you're claiming an attribution to the God, an affect, a behavior, a style, or whatever, but not the thing. What is this thing you're talking about? And I keep digging on to what is a thing, and I've had philosophers realize, well, nobody can answer that. Oh, well, then that is the answer. You've already then reached that answer. No one can actually say what that thing as. In other words, if you talk about a dog, a dog, not just a dog quality is like everything with 4 legs is not a dog. Everything that is small and furry is not a dog. It is really, in our minds, easy to make generalizations. We love to do it. We generalize everything. But when we actually realize the details of something, then either we show it to be true or it falls apart.
Well, I think if you're arguing with philosophers, then they probably have a sort of vocational interest in having all of their claims be logically or conceptually coherent. Whereas when you're talking to random religious people on the street, they will say, well, I don't know what a God is, but I feel it and I believe it. And then you don't really get any more purchase by saying, describe it in more detail, because they'll say, that's all I know.
Well, no, I say, okay, you feel it. So what does it you feel? Do you feel it in your mind? Do you feel it as a sensation in your body? Like if they say, well, they hear from God, what voice is it in? Is it male or female? Is it loud? Does it have an accent? I mean, does it talk to, favorably to you? Does it talk soft? There's all kinds of stuff. We're used to talking and using things and people not questioning anything. There is a great deal of philosophic thing that we can give to people just by getting to think. Because if they leave me, most people, and they leave me after talking to me even for 5 minutes about this kind of stuff, start thinking more than they have before talking to me. And
so there's a lot of unanswered questions behind the belief already, right?
Definitely.
Based on partitioning of their space where they sort of put the belief in an area that's not vulnerable to questioning or skeptical inquiry at all. So yeah, I think that's valuable.
Yeah, and speaking of valuable, I would like to go back to your music. I really think it is valuable because I've always liked rap. I mean, since I was a kid, I was raised in Southern California. I mean, always had rap around me. But one thing I didn't like so much about rap is I do connect deeply with its passion for, human rights or for fighting injustice. What I didn't like was all of the sexism and homophobia and talk of like God and stuff, and so I really do appreciate, having you, produce rap that, is of a quality that I can feel 100% good with, instead of go, yeah, I like this, but not,
And we didn't. This is the first time we came on this topic, but in case your viewers don't know who I am, that's what I do. I do hip hop. I think of it as like scientific rap, and I call it peer-reviewed rap. But by necessity, that ends up being skeptical and debunking of religion, because religious claims about the world are always in opposition to scientific claims about the world.
Yeah, that's really great. So, did you decide that you connected to rap, or at a older age or younger age, or what got you interested in that medium?
Yeah, when I think back, like I just thought it was amazing. I thought it was like the sound, the beat, and also the storytelling. I've always been a word guy, so I used to write short stories even in elementary school, and I like memorized long poems that I could recite and stuff. Like there's a poem from Canada called "The Cremation of Sam McGee." It's like a 7-minute long rhyming poem, and when I was 10 years old, I just read it. This is the shit. I want to memorize this so I can always say it whenever, anybody wants to hear it. And so I like rhyming poetry's been my bag since I can remember. So I guess that was the main attraction for rap for me, was like storytelling, wordplay, and, just taking you into a world that you're not from, but suddenly you can smell the smells and hear the sounds. And it's like a portal. I'm not from, the kinds of places that produced the first rap, let's say. I grew up in like wilderness, interior British Canada, but like the suburbs. So, there was no place that I was from that had any of the dangers that rap was about cataloging. But I just, I was like by that world and by the sort of creativity that went into creating this art form from nothing. I always loved the story of rap as people like in a deprivation situation. They didn't have they couldn't buy, afford musical instruments or whatever, or lessons at Juilliard. So they're like, we're going to invent this from whole cloth. It's the voice, the beat, the turntables that are in our parents' living rooms. We're just going to find new ways to make them make sounds and, plug into the light post. And it's just, it's got a real sort of like pure human creativity, making something from nothing aspect to it. But I don't know, like my 11-year-old self didn't really figure this all out. But in retrospect, I just respect the art form so much for the raw creativity that goes into it. And then how, like, it's really tapped into something that I think is like deep and instinctual in Homo sapiens even, which is the like rhyme, storytelling, stylistic language, live performance, and entertaining a crowd with just your talent with words. That's Homer, that's Beowulf, that's the African griot. That's like any culture, you trace its roots back pre-technology, their primary form of entertainment was storytelling in a stylistic manner. And the sort of troubadour tradition and the griot tradition, the trickster, the shaman, all that. So I think rap really just tapped into that vein in a way that a lot of other art forms didn't manage to do. And I'm also like a bit of a literature geek. That's my background. So I was I was always all about my English classes and studied poets. And sort of at one point in my sort of late teens, I was like, if Shakespeare was born today, what would he be? He'd be a rapper, not some other kind of playwright. That's the like lyrical sophistication of the art form. So I ended up writing a comparative literature honors and then master's thesis comparing medieval poetry competitions to hip hop freestyle battling and showing how the sort of core elements of like ironic, I'm not saying rappers are influenced by medieval English poets, but the sort of cultural factors that produce the competitive poetry traditions of both areas were really similar. So, that it's not your normal way to get into hip hop. But I was just like a poetry geek and decided that rap was like the most sort of dynamic form of contemporary poetry. And I was writing about that in my classes, and I was writing rhymes at the same time. So this is like 1998 is when I first started sort of like, really getting into the culture and, rapping with DJ friends of mine in Vancouver, just like freestyling at house parties, signing up for open mics and freestyle battles and talent shows and whatever, wherever I could get it in. But my message was like rap is a lot more sophisticated than people recognize as an art form. And it's got deeper roots than people recognize. People were like, flash in the pan. No, this is ancient.
Yeah, I agree. I think that rhythm in general, you can definitely see beginning in Africa. Even look like at the history of languages, most of the stuff that we have, the earlier stuff. Like I know that I think it's not the San people, but of South Africa, but I think it's I can't remember the name, but
with their like pop click languages and
correct, stuff? Correct. The click language, pop language, exactly. You know what I'm talking. You know what I was trying to say.
It's like beatboxing mixed with linguistics, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was saying I agree that definitely historically from the beginning we and drumming. I mean it not just drumming for like now we think like a music parade or something or a rock band or whatever, but drumming has been around and a deep part of religion. I mean. I think it's I can't remember if it's where it's at, Africa or Turkey or something like that. But there's even like bowls where they believe they put water in and using that as a type of a drum. And they were saying like early drums, like before putting skin over it. And just an interesting idea, like wow, I never thought about that. And just in using our hands, in a way of drumming, like clapping is in a sense a form of drumming. And just like you said, beats. So yeah, I think that we've always liked drumming and felt it was spiritual because it moves us.
Well, and looping this back to the wider conversation, a lot of what we're talking about was in a religious context as well, wasn't it? And the sort of traditional sort of hunter-gatherer interpretation of the rapturous playing of drums and singing of songs was the spirits are speaking through us. This is us like channeling the ancestors or channeling the gods, and speaking in tongues and all that. And, I used to claim that as one of my reasons I couldn't say I was atheist, because I was like, you give me a mic and a beat and the freestyle start flowing. And where's that coming from? It's not coming from me. I'm just channeling it. And a lot of rappers say that, like God is speaking through me, or, it's very explicit. Like, Andre 3000, no drugs or alcohol so I could get.
You cut out. You still there?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You cut
I'm not
out.
sure if that did that get lost?
It got cut out for a second. But so go ahead, Andre 3000. Good.
Yeah. Where he's like, no drugs or alcohol so I could get the signal clear as day. Like the signal he's talking about, he'd be speaking through us. So we'd be so sincere with this here, like a lot of rappers have that interpretation of what their creative process really is. And I can relate to that because, if you give me a mic and a beat and I'm like transported, then I used like when I first started getting into freestyle, I was like, where is this coming from? And I had a sort of spiritual interpretation of it. Like the goal of an artist is to tap into the like deeper spiritual forces and give them form. It was only really when I did that evolution project and I read some pretty good sort of evolutionary psychology accounts of where art would have come from, in our Darwinian past, I was like, okay, so that interpretation is probably not right. But I wonder whether, speaking of hip hop and religion, it's probably not a coincidence how religious all these rappers are. I think probably artists are more likely to be religious than people in other kinds of jobs, because something about the experience of being in this transported, like, sort of rapturous state of creation is really just conducive to thinking there's a supernatural dimension to it. Whereas if you don't get into that, it's easier to just look at the world in a naturalistic way. You know what I mean? So it almost like takes effort to interpret your artistic creativity through a naturalistic lens, and that's not something you see many of the top rappers doing.
Well, yeah, and I am an artist and a poet and a writer, and so I know what you're saying because I've felt all those kind of feelings for doing all my stuff. And I even have a video where I tried to show someone how I draw an eye and how there's nothing, because this one guy told me I am too naturalistic and a hardline in my naturalism. I'm extremely hardline. I would say I'm 100%, because to me, what's a percentage? Percentage still starts with an ability for knowledge. So if I have no, like you said, Bayesian still has to start with some sort of a point of beginning. But since there is no beginning for the term God, that I can't even start a population of how possible it could be, because what are you even talking about? But anyways,
your prior credence is zero for the God hypothesis.
Zero. Show me that I have to move from zero. Nothing has ever showed me that I have to move from zero. No philosopher could even answer what is a God and give me an actual explanation. So because of that, but anyways, it's good.
I predict that nothing will ever move you. That evidence is not going to come. The sort of demonstration.
But I'm open. See, that's the difference. I have believe in belief etiquette, which means I have reasonable belief acquisitions. I have good belief maintenance. I keep checking up. Am I still right? Am I still right? Am I still right? And then I have honest belief relinquishment, that I'm willing to give up anything if you show me that I'm actually, there's some new evidence and some new reason that validates that I will change. I will absolutely change anything.
Those are powerful stories for people. There's a lot of sort of disillusionment, like there's no point in arguing with fundamentalists because it's just going nowhere or whatever. But a lot of people have stories about that thing that sort of tipped them. And I get people commenting on my YouTube videos like I was a believer until I saw some of these, and now I'm actually questioning it all. And I've like completed my transition and stuff. When I write songs, I kind of hope I'm gonna like really get in people's minds. But when I get feedback from people saying like this pushed me over the edge, I totally don't believe what I used to believe. That's powerful motive to keep on doing it. And for me, like that was the thing like 8 or 9 years ago, like talking about belief revision. It's funny when I go back to my old lyrics, because I've been putting music out since 2004, and there is a bunch of like soul, spirituality, like energy kind of stuff in there. It's not really, there's no like God stuff really, but there is sort of suggestive of a supernatural, force that infuses things kind of lyrics. And I'm like, can't believe I put that shit out. But it is like, it does indicate the evolution of my thinking.
Yeah, but I think that it's really good. I think that it's easy to feel like what you're saying is not, making a message, but that's just nonsense. I mean, the history of religion shows that talking to people actually makes a difference. And all you have to look is, does talking therapy work? Well, I don't know. Is there such thing as counseling? Do you believe that counseling has no effect on the mental, stability of people? If you do, then you believe that talking can actually, cause people to do. So, and I that's why, like I said, I'm a truth seeker, and I am hard. I'm extremely hard on ideas. What I'm not hard on is people. I think that we need to attack thinking and not people. And so what I always do is I always make sure the person I'm talking to, or I strive to, making sure they feel valuable, like some atheists, especially if they're hard as I am, will generally be, like hostile in a sense towards believers. I'm not. Yeah. Those are fellow human beings to me. There's a people that have a belief that's not accurate. if I were to, let's just say logically, if I were to hate every person or have a bad, aggression towards every person that I didn't like what they believe, it'd be a lot of people, like most people, including atheists, and including my own family. So I think a lot of that still comes back to that. Yeah, well, I'm here too, and since I do believe in this only reality, then this reality really matters. I need to start acting and behaving in a way that shows it really matters. And that's why I said I appreciate, what you're doing, because it does really matter. To me, lives are on the line. That's how much it matters. How many people are going to commit suicide this year simply because they have a flawed religious belief that says they shouldn't be gay, that they shouldn't be this, that they shouldn't be that they shouldn't like sex. I mean, everything, all this stuff that it does, we have got to speak out. I don't think it's even ethical for us to be quiet.
Yeah, I agree. And once you've accepted that lives are on the line, but after lives are not, it does make every single moment that you're here so much more important and precious that you do something right with it.
Yes, and like I said, I think you are doing something right. I really like the animation you have too in that in the video about God of the Gaps. And and as being someone whose book is about the evolution of religion, I really like that you add so much religion of prehistory or history, early history, not just Christian and Judaism and Muslims, because to me, it's a lot of atheists. It seems like focus on too much on just that. It's like that. Even if that's gone, the world's problems of religion is not over.
Yeah, they've managed to go viral better than other faiths, but I think the sociological literature says there's approximately 10,000 current existing religions that have adherents right now. There's a lot of them have small numbers, but that's evidence in itself that that they can't all be right, or that it's unlikely that they're all going to be passed to a single source when there's so much conflicting information in all of them. It just, it looks so much like languages, right? Like cultural variations on an original theme. That's why in that Rap Guide to Religion album, I was really trying to explore, what does evolution have to say about religion? Can we, maybe not today, maybe it's not evolutionarily adaptive today, but can we look at models that would show how religious beliefs would have spread culturally through a sort of Darwinian competition, or also the instinct towards imputing intentionality to nature would have been ingrained in our brains as sort of default state. And I think it is the case that everyone is sort of a natural born creationist, and it takes learning to not impute intention to everything and say this tree is here for us to eat from and stuff like that. That's really developmental psychologists have found that as well. God explanations are way more intuitive for us than naturalistic explanations. That doesn't make them right, but it's an interesting evolutionary case to look into.
Well, yeah, I talk about that since I have a psychology degree. The fact that, to me, if you look at behaviorism, it even talks about that children before 7 have animistic, magical thinking, conclusions or beliefs or hypotheses to all kinds of stuff. So to me, that's why I say I think that it's, to me personally, unethical to have a child introduced or, forced into religion before 7. That child has no ability to even process if what you're offering, is real or not. They really don't know. So, and the thing is that most thinkers don't leave that because the problem is they get indoctrinated. So they already have this natural inclination you talked about that most people would kind of lose a lot of if they just did nothing. If there was no such thing as religion, a lot of us would think magical, and then later, okay, that's not matching a good assessment of the world. But so the thing is, though, they do start that. And then what I always say is that I'm really against hereditary religion. If I don't destroy, in a sense, religion and people's beliefs, that's fine. I don't wish it to continue, but what I really am against is hereditary religion. In other words, because you're raised in a Muslim family, you are a Muslim. That's not a belief.
That's the majority of all religion that you're talking about.
Of course it is. It's like 78%.
If there's no more heredity religion, then there's really no more religion. Because nobody grows up with naturalistic beliefs and then goes and finds religion later. You only grow up with religion and find naturalistic beliefs later. And so if they weren't being indoctrinated from young, then it would just disappear. But one thing that you just said, I wonder, I feel like what is an animal and what is a plant and how can they be here? The sort of illusion of design phenomenon is very powerful.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's really the case that someone that just went through their life but was never taught religion but was also never taught evolutionary theory or biology, they might actually just converge on there must be a God. Like, I think gods would be invented if they weren't taught in the absence of evolutionary explanations. It's the only thing that really says where stuff comes from without a magical explanation. You know what I mean?
I think spirits. Heredity. Well, if you look at the archaeological record, to me, gods do not come until 12,000. They come at agriculture, right? So before agriculture, I've been doing stuff for 5 years on archaeology. I have all kinds of stuff. So 30,000 years ago, there's evidence of shamans.
Yeah.
But shamanism doesn't inherently have to have gods.
Have you read the book Big Gods by Ari Norenzayan?
No.
Okay, definitely a must read. His thesis in the book is basically that it's true that the sort of big omniscient gods of the universe don't exist until 12,000 years ago. But most shamanic cultures have gods. There's just lots of little ones. And they're the gods of the tribe. They're not the gods of the next tribe. The next tribe's got their own gods, but they are gods in the sense of being highly powerful supernatural beings that you have to propitiate. So you have to perform the rituals in order to get their favor and make the crops not fail. But it's very sort of local, witchcraft, magical thinking kind of stuff, but they still are gods. And what belief in gods did was track the size and scope of civilizational change, so that as domesticated animals and plants allowed for cities and city-states to get larger and larger, people's religious beliefs sort of evolved to track the size of their societies and also to solve the problem of free riders. Because when you live in a 150-person tribe, you can keep an eye on everybody, and if they all believe that the local gods are keeping an eye on them too, but if you live in a city of 10,000 people, then half the people you meet are strangers, then common belief in a deity that controls the universe and punishes you after you die becomes a badge of sort of trust, so that you can trade with this person or stay in their house and they won't kill you because they're performing all the sort of highly costly, burdensome rituals that are unfakeable because they're so inconvenient. You know what I mean? So the idea that I think you're onto something when you say gods didn't exist before 12,000 years ago, but it's only certain kinds of gods that didn't exist before.
Well, it depends on what you mean by God. I do agree that shamanism has spirits and has ancestors. I do agree that in a sense, not in our sense of a god, but to them they were supernatural beings. I do think that they had supreme powers. I just don't.
But not omniscient or omnipotent.
Right. So to me, I don't think that they fit the quality of what people call or usually term gods. Yes, they had spirits. To me, animism spirits start probably pre-human, because you have Neanderthals burying their dead with artifacts before humans. So, and then you have them burying humans. Then you have humans seeming to bury humans in a similar style to the Neanderthals, kind of. Then you have humans in Israel and in South Africa, both burying humans intentionally, but in a kind of a little more human way. And then from then on, it's all us, and it keeps evolving. So to me, animism starts at 100,000 years for humans, and then at least, and then 50,000 years ago we get totemism. We start to have building artifacts and doing art that a lot of times with religious significance. Some of the cave paintings are like a mile into the ground. I mean, it's not like they went specifically the heart of the cave to put a painting. It's very ritualistic, not just art. not all. Some of the art might have been just art hunting, like you said, and I do agree, hunting magic. In fact, a lot of the figurines for totemism, I don't think even they were in a sense gods. They're more like what you said. They had to do with the concept of a supernatural. I think a lot of times, like you said, ancestor. That's a real big thing because they believed in souls. That's why they buried the dead and all that. So to me, then you got totemism at 50,000 years beginning. Then shamanism at 30,000, then paganism at 12,000, and then to me, progressed religion happens pretty much in Egypt at 5,000, when you have the connection. It becomes really into big time polytheism when you have the connection of the state and the religion. So the first time the major power is now promoting the religion.
Yeah, one question I sometimes have when it comes to hip hop is, if religion facilitated some of these transitions in the past, like maybe consolidation of state power or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
If there was ever a sort of strategic benefit to having false beliefs, which I think there probably were in lots of cases.
Oh, I'm sure.
Is that the case with hip hop now? Are so many of the mainstream rappers religious because they interpret their creative process as a gift from God? Or are they making it because their belief in God somehow animates them or inspires them or drives them in a way that a naturalistic perspective doesn't get from you? I don't know. I see some pretty purpose-driven rappers who sort of they're like, this is my path. God has chosen me to do this, and so let's get on with it. And, I tend to be more like a questioning versus should I be doing this? What's the strategic value for society or for me? But I don't ever have a sense that I was chosen to do it, except maybe by fans that told me to keep going. You know what I mean? So having to think your way through whether something's the right thing or not, maybe that actually does create internalized roadblocks in a way that just believing that you're fulfilling God's plan sort of frees you from all those questions, and then you can just dive into the music. I wonder about that sometimes.
Yeah, but I've wondered that about what rappers do from the beginning. In fact, I also thought the opposite. I also thought that a lot of times rappers come from very religious communities. I mean,
true.
More, especially where I was raised. I mean, the thought of someone. In fact, when I was a kid, I didn't become an atheist till I was 36. When I was a kid, I didn't even know what an atheist was. What's an atheist? I mean, everyone believes in God. I mean, I thought everybody. I mean, who doesn't believe in God? Now, everyone has a different conception of what that is, including someone spiritual, whatever. But to me, as a kid, I always thought everyone believes in God. But I thought that some people, including rappers, would say they believe in God, even though they may not have that much care about any religious thing, just because they know that everybody believes in God. So in a sense, they don't want that flack that, because I know I've lost, I could be a lot bigger in my blog and my YouTube if I was, more spiritual, or I could be the opposite. I'd have more people if I was meaner, if I was more of a dickhead. People like dickheads. They like people to be. So the fact that I try to walk the line, like you said, of thoughtful, I try to go, how much is this going to benefit society, not just what's going to benefit me. And I try to think, is this going to hurt people? That's not my goal. My goal is to teach. And so I have to like I said, it's a battle. I could be a lot better if I could just let myself go. That's I feel like you're saying, in the sense, they feel like they can let themselves go, but they really are still letting themselves go in a confinement, because they're still doing it in a sense. If it's about the God belief, then it's really towards only a God thinking. And that to me is limiting, because even they would say, I would hope most rappers would say they want the truth. I don't.
Yeah. I think I'm just thinking of some examples like Kendrick Lamar, or like Chance the Rapper, or Kanye. Those are all very religious rappers. So I think they would say, I want the truth, and they would say, my conclusion is that the truth is what the Bible teaches. And, I don't know if you saw Chance on Saturday Night Live on Saturday.
No.
But, he's he's a great performer. He wasn't even the musical guest, but he channeled all this great comedy and hip hop sketches and everything. And then he's, on stage at the end, and he's like, I serve an awesome God. I'm so excited to be here. For him, that's that's his number one thing. And, it's I like respect people's art a lot when I totally disagree with their beliefs. You know, it's kind of like, can I still laugh at Louis C.K. now? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you have, I mean, that's been a perennial issue with art, though. Like, people whose morals you have problems with, or whose, like, worldview you have a problem with, and they're still producing things where you're like, damn, that's pretty dope.
Yeah.
Shame about the beliefs or shame about the actions. But I think that goes both ways. So I do actually end up getting some feedback from people who are like, I don't agree with your atheism, but I really love the music, or, you know, it's really entertaining or whatever. I think you can reach across the aisle that way. If you can make someone laugh, you can make them think too.
Well, and once again, that's another thing that I like about what you're doing is the fact that I know you're hitting a community that everyone needs to try to go after. You know, because to me, a lot of the youth listen to rap. And to me, they're the ones that we need to get, because they'll change everything. And so to me, I mean, I understand how to talk philosophy and stuff, but I try to limit that because I really want to get through to people, you know, who other people can't, or other people are not getting to. I try to talk to them and I know you mentioned street epistemology. That's not what I do. I have my own style, my own thing, my own way. But I have more of a motivational teaching style than questioning. My questions are always to teach, so it still appeals to teaching. But that's what I feel like, in a sense, you're doing too. You're doing motivational teaching. You're doing, in a sense, the same kind of style as me, because you're not just questioning people's beliefs. You're offering true details that not only back up what you're proposing, it also makes people realize that what they believe might be an error. To me, that's motivational teaching. In other words, your goal is the same as mine. You're not just wanting them to doubt. You're wanting them to think.
Which is why I always come back to evolution as such a crucial tool, because, you know, like, telling people that you don't think their belief in God is right, it provokes a indignation reaction that you can sort of like work through with dialogue sometimes. But saying, like, let me show you this thing that's been discovered by biologists or psychologists that is so, like, fascinatingly powerful in its explanation of something that would otherwise be completely incomprehensible, people really will come with you on that kind of stuff, because even if they're religious, they think, you know, they're like, they'll sign on to loving science and loving knowledge. And then, you know, it's only after they've come with you and been like, damn, that's crazy, that makes so much sense, that they then go, but wait, it only makes sense if evolution's right. And if evolution's right, then maybe my belief in a creator God is not. You know what I mean? So it's like a secondary, like an afterthought that I feel like that's got such a potent, like, almost corrosive value against false beliefs, because it kind of like wears them away without you even noticing, you know? Like, you talk about the hammer of truth, I'm more like the sort of like acetic acid of truth. Like, let's dissolve the false beliefs so slowly that they don't even notice until they're like, oh, they're gone.
Well, and I don't consider my hammer of truth just to be a negative thing. It's not. It's also a positive thing, because the hammer builds new things. It crashes and destroys through falsehoods, but then it also builds truth. So it's not. I don't see it as my hammer of truth as being like just a negative style. It's not. It's a building, because we have to destroy that which is false, and then we build up that which is true.
Yeah, I think both approaches are valuable, and I kind of like, I try to read people and see like where I think that, you know, where's the wedge going to fit with individuals. You know, I don't think a one size fits all strategy really works, because I think you're right that like conceptions of God are so different from person to person and from group to group, and what's going to work for them is going to be different as well. But you know, that's where having a conversation can, in a lot of ways, like, get you more purchase than just making a song, because then when a song is out there, then it's just what it says, you know, but there's no like adapting it to the circumstances. But on the other hand, it can reach more people than a conversation can.
Well, the thing I like even my writing, or I have memes and stuff, when you have stuff like that, people can't interrupt you. They have to listen to the full thought. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when people first hear me say, like, you know, my ideas, they're like, oh, that sounds nonsense, because they've never heard of it. And we're big on that. Things that we don't know, we always generally are, you know, considering to be not, you know, part of us. But the more I talk, just like your song, the more that you rap, the more you listen to it, the more you starting to understand, wait a minute, maybe the first assessment wasn't actually the one I need to go with. And so like even for me, like when I first heard your song God the Gaps the first time, I thought, I'm not sure if I totally like his style. But then I started looking at the cartoon, and I started thinking about what you were saying, and I started going, oh, wait a minute. Now I'm really starting to like it. Not only that, I'm really starting to get the point. I'm starting to get what you're doing. More than just rapping, you're really, being a motivational teacher. You're really showing stuff. And I thought, okay, now I really like that, because that's definitely something that I feel, would be an asset to rap itself. To have people that are more credible, and that in the fact of what they're talking about science, what they're talking about reality, because they may feel that they're giving a credibility on what it's like for an experience, for them, or for, if they're talking about inner city or something. But that doesn't mean it's matching. If they want reality, not like what the man or whatever, or someone is pushing on them, society, then they should also continue that to their beliefs. And I think that's what you're asking of them.
Well, I think hip hop's already got the sort of principles and sort of cultural precursors of this, because a lot like KRS-One, right? Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everyone, or like knowledge is power, Public Enemy stuff. It's like get educated has been one of the core messages of underground political hip hop since the beginning. Like ignorance is the true enemy, and just like fact-based, knowledge-based rap that's got a message that's not just about like, this is my opinion as an individual and as an artist, but like, look at these things about the world, and if you doubt what I'm talking about, like Wikipedia is your friend or whatever. Like, I think there's sort of already a lane in hip-hop for that, but I just never have a sense whether it's, whether this is going to stay super niche. Like, let's be honest, I'm not super famous rapper, right? I've got like a fan base, it's boutique, I make a living off of it. I perform a lot of live shows, and like my videos go 10,000, or some of the biggest ones 100,000 views, but I've got nothing in the millions of views. So I kind of wonder whether like this sort of skeptical, science literate like vein of hip hop is going to blow, or is going to really like catch on in a way that people wouldn't expect, or whether it's going to stay niche, and how much of that is about like the currents in society of how powerful religion is, or maybe there's something about like there is something about like atheism and non-belief as just one of those topics that people shy away from. You know what I mean? Like, even people that are fans of mine will sometimes be like more science and less atheism, because that, they'll be like, like that just is an uncomfortable conversation. I don't want people seeing like atheist rap on my, on my like playlist title or something like that. Because with my friends that are believers and stuff, so I kind of like respect, I respect I'm not saying accommodationism in the sense of like saying that what they believe might be true, but accommodation in the sense of like have the conversation in a way that doesn't make people run away from it right from the beginning. That's what I'm trying to do with a lot of my lyrics, is like, I think show tell, and like, you win more flies with honey in terms of like, look how amazing science is. We got a lot to offer if you accept this naturalistic perspective. It's not impoverished. It's not nihilistic or meaningless. And actually you get way more than you lose by giving up the supernatural. Come and look at all the sort of riches in store. That's sort of my angle on it, more than just religion bashing. Although religion bashing ends up being a sort of inevitable consequence of talking about reality in an informed way.
Yeah, I agree about religion bashing not be the only thing, but I'm an anti-accommodationalist. I don't accommodate anything. I simply speak the truth, and I try to do it, with as much compassion as possible. But some things, it's like, how should we approach police violence? Should we say it doesn't happen in America? Should we say that it has no systemic issues because that's not comfortable for people that are not of color? No, you have to say, no, it's happening to people of color more than anybody else, and it isn't right, and they're not being tried, And so to me, sometimes you just have to say the truth. I'm not saying that your style is bad. I think you're doing motivation teaching just like me, so I like it. I'm just saying you're doing it the accommodationist. I am an anti-accommodation. What I always accommodate is try to accommodate people. I try to make sure that when I talk to them, I don't talk down to them. If they say they believe, I do not automatically say something is false. I wait till they say that belief is true. Then I say, well, wait a minute, I don't agree.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, that's not a bad analogy, but, with, like, my accommodationism with police brutality and Black Lives Matter would be like, yes, you say unequivocally that there is a lot of abuse of power going on by police, and that it definitely has a racial component and is disproportionately being the brunt of it is being borne by African American and Latino communities. And then you also like don't go and therefore cops are racist pigs. Then you have to like have the conversation in a way where the reform is happening within policing, because the like response that says we can't trust any cops is super corrosive for society and the potential for like communities to get worse, because if there's a problem, people will try to deal with it in a vigilante way instead of trusting the police to sort it out. And I think civil society like is predicated on giving up violence to the state. That's like, that's the Leviathan. That's what it means to live in a society that's not completely governed by vendettas. So, like the accommodationism to me would not mean denying that the problem's happening, but it would mean like engaging with the conversation in a way that both sides are ready to come to the table. And if if the police department is denying that there's a problem, then that's where you got to push back. But if they won't have the conversation because you're like, the whole system's corrupt, well, hold on, that's not like a fruitful way to get people on board with making changes.
Well, I think that the system is corrupt, and it was designed corrupt because it was never designed for multiculturalism. It was never designed to help everyone. Never. In fact, even in, I think it's 1997, Congress agreed that the police's job is to enforce the law, not to protect the citizens. So it was ratified, I think it's in 1992. I'm not 100% on those dates, but I know what happened. But anyway, so my point is, yes, the system is bad. I don't think that means that we can't address it. And I do 100% agree. Don't get me wrong. If someone thinks anti-accommodationism means that I attack people brutally, I'm against that. I don't attack people, attack thinking. So to me, I think that it would be extremely inaccurate to say all police are racist. That's nonsense. I don't believe that. And anyone who says that to me personally, that would not be anti-accommodationist. That would just be bigotry. So I don't think that.
But for me, I'm just saying, like NWA, fuck the police. If that's your daily, then I think it's legit to express it. And I think the sort of pushback against cops that comes from hip hop culture like is more than justified. But it's one thing to make a song about something expressing a rage response to a situation you've been in, and then it's another to sort of like make blanket dismissals of a whole like profession. Like I respect policing as a profession, and I think it's totally necessary, but it needs to be cleaned up. And you got to start from a perspective of respecting the concept of a policeman or a policewoman as like a necessary aspect of your community to be able to have that conversation in the first place. So, I have a little bit of like pushback against this sort of anarchistic response to police brutality, because I don't think it's really thought through what the end result would be of them getting their way if they got it. You know what I mean?
Well, you said anarchism. I actually am an anarchist. I'm a socialist anarchist. And my conception of that, in a sense, is I'm against governments, not society. So to me, police are required for society. I want them to be for society. In other words, I'm not against the concept of the American government, a government of the people, for the people, by the people. Yeah, but I want it to be the people are the government, not anyone ruling us. And as far as, like I said, police, to me, police should be for us. Absolutely. It's like fire department. I mean, all this stuff to me is even a military. We still need to be protected. We still need society. I'm not anti-society at all. In fact, I want more society, more caring, more sharing, more involvement, more the people matter. And I think that that's something also that I feel rap taps into at a core level, and why I've liked rap since a kid, being an anarchist. To me, it's the fact that people make a difference, that people matter, that no one should be marginalized, no one should be treated it, and that everyone has a voice, including whether or not, like you said before, whether or not you have an education at Juilliard, whether or not you have a speech coach, whether or not you were taught literature, you still should be able to. I do agree. That doesn't mean that someone who's taught literature, someone who has everything else, shouldn't be able to do rap. I think that I agree that it is a form of human inspiration. It would be much to say that someone can't do music in general, because I think that it is so innately us. And I think that, of course, we're always inspired. As an artist, I'm inspired by all kinds of things. As a writer, I'm inspired by all kinds of ideas that came pre-me. But I think that the one unique thing that we all have, in a sense, is, like you said, that storytelling. And it's also that we want to learn. And I think that that's something that it sounds like you tap into, and it's something that I try to tap into. I believe in people. I believe in them so much. I know that I can challenge their thinking and show them a way, and I accept that it won't get everybody, but I know the power of reason is there. The desire for knowledge is there. You just have to spark it. And people themselves would go, yeah, I want to know what's true. And I want to be informed. I mean, people don't, it's not a comfortable feeling to be, wrong. But it's a more uncomfortable feeling to realize that you know you're wrong and you don't do anything about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's corrosive, like, in ways that people aren't even aware of. You know what I mean? Like, yes. Holding a belief that you know is not true, but you can't bring yourself to give it up. I think that's just degrading internally. And it's actually sometimes liberating to say, you know what, I was wrong about that, and I'm going to tell everybody now. And, that can actually be like a weight off your shoulders. It was for me. Like public reversals of your position is a pretty rare thing, in politics and science and hip hop. But when it happens, it can be like a good example to people, and just, it can be like personally transformative. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for those opportunities for personal revision as well, but you don't want to be like a leaf in the wind either, right?
True. Well, because we want to have valid, justified beliefs. And that's my core philosophy is justificationism, that things have to be justified. You can't just say, oh, well, I know it, or it's just faith, or it has to have a justification. And to me, once you do that, a lot of concepts that may magically accept just can't be accepted if you hold that standard. But I was going to ask you, so what would you say is your favorite rap song that you wrote, that inspires you? In other words, like, if I think about a poem that I wrote, I know which one, really connects to me. And mine is Only Human. It's just about me being inadequate, but still that's okay because I'm only human. It's one of my favorite poems because I think it's inspiring by showing weakness.
I think there's the song that I got a lot of really positive feedback about, and I also like come back to a lot, is called Performance Feedback Revision. And it's a very technical title for a song, but it was from the Rap Guide to Evolution, and I was trying to think about like how evolution can apply at multiple levels. And for me as an artist, that's what my creative process is all about. You got to put it in front of people and see how they react. And, the feedback can be explicit or implicit. And then you go back and you change things about it. And then you put it in front of people again. And that is the process by which I learned how to rap and be a performer and be an entertainer. And it really is like a pretty good paraphrase of how evolution works as well. If you think of the performance as the phenotype, the feedback as the natural selection, differential replication, and the revision as changes in the genome that result, it shows how our creative processes, our learning processes, like performance feedback revision is how you can master a craft or a skill or a profession. So anyway, that, like when I kind of wrote that down, like this is what it takes for me to like learn how to be a good rapper. And if you slightly like turn it into a metaphor, that's also how evolution works in nature. It became this like sort of all-encompassing concept. And like no other song, people would write to me and be like, that, I'm doing creative writing class. That's exactly how it's going. Or I made my students, like memorize that so that they can revise for the test. And it's the only, I've had 2 separate people email me photos of performance feedback revision tattooed on their body, because they were like, this is how, one guy said that he, overcame alcoholism, that using that as a sort of mantra, of how to interact with people in his life that he was having difficulties with. And, I don't know, it's just like, it's just 3 words, but if I had a mantra, that is my like mentality of how to improve your understanding of the world, improve yourself as a person, improve yourself as an artist. Performance feedback revision, it's like an algorithm. And it's one of my songs, and it's also a video that's animated by the same guy who did God of the Gaps, and it's quite a funny video as well. So I'd encourage people to check that out.
Well, you should send me a link so that I can share it.
Okay,
if you want to. Yeah, because I think that it's good to to hear you talk about the stuff, but it's also good to listen to it. So I mean, and I think that it's important in our community. I consider atheists, to have a community in general, of people that don't believe, but, connect with each other. And to me, I think our community needs to do a lot more of promoting itself to itself, not just for monetary gain, but because we gain socially also. I mean, there's a lot of people in our community that aren't as informed that need to be. So I think that, we need to get stuff out. And your videos are educational, as much as they are, lyrical. And so I think that that's why I'm trying to help you. I mean, I feel like, if I see a need, then I should be the first one to address that need, since don't I see the need? And so my thinking in general is, though, that we rise by helping each other. And that includes even my own self, that I realize I can't do it alone, that I need people. And I realize that knowing that also means that I need to behave as if that is real. And so I try to go out of my way to help others, in the atheist community. Especially, you have quality stuff. If someone's quality, then I'm happy to do it. But I feel like there's a need. And I really wish that more in our community would see that. Because you would be bigger then, in the community, if we were a lot more helpful. And we should.
That's actually been one of my favorite sort of experiences from the last 10 years. Because I didn't really sort of set out to be part of the atheist community. I had never even heard of it. I was like writing a rap song and a rap album about Darwin, and I put it out there, and I started getting all of these emails and messages from people like, yeah, you're speaking for the free thinkers. And I was like, what's a free thinker? I hadn't really actually like engaged with any of the skeptical community at all.
Right.
But they just had the strongest, I was just like, I want to, I think evolution's awesome, and I want to help people understand how it works. So the sort of like political leverage that evolution and Darwin have for skepticism and atheism was something I was pretty oblivious to when I started the project. And then just the like welcoming that I got, and the sense of like, oh damn, these are my people. Like, where were they? I had no sense of any like visibility or accessibility of there being a skeptical or atheist community. And I've just met so many people through having put the music out and gotten great responses. And, it's been like, where were they hiding? But I guess I just wasn't looking either. And for people that are with a religion right now, and they're like, I'm not sure if I really believe still, but if I tell anyone I don't believe, I lose all my friends and family in one shot, which is the case with a lot of religious communities. Like, just the fact of there being non-believers that hang out and go to skeptics in the pub and like talk to each other and friends on Facebook. And, when I get a Facebook friend request and it's like 30 mutual friends, I'm like, who's this person? Oh, those are the friends. Okay. I'm like, almost like by default, if someone friend requests me, that has like a whole bunch of mutual friends that are atheists and skeptics, I'm like, I'm pretty confident I can trust this person, because the community polices itself and people get called out if they try to pull any bullshit, So, I like been inspired by it, and I agree. I want to see more prominence for it. That's why when I write songs now, I'm often like, come join us. like, it's nice in here. These are the things that we're into. And, you know, just to like speak for a community that I didn't even know existed 10 years ago, I feel is a privilege.
Oh yeah. And there's a lot of us. There's, so the thing is though, like on Facebook, like maybe, you know, do you have a page that's just for you and a personal page?
Yeah, I have a personal page, and then I have like an artist,
right?
I guess a personal profile and an artist page. Yeah.
Like I have 3 personal profiles, and I have 2 of them at the max, and that's
right.
one of the reasons I got a second one, was because the fans said, hey, I want you to have so we can like friend you. So I made another one. So I was just saying.
Yeah, I guess it's set now so that you end up following somebody if they can't take any more friend requests. There's like, you can like subscribe to them and stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have like almost 4,000 followers to my main one, plus the 5 max. But so no, what I was going to say is that one of the things that I did is I started going into atheist groups. So I was going to say, I don't know if you're doing that, but an idea to get is to go in there and say that you would like atheist friends. I mean, because at least you know you're starting with an area where there is atheists, so your chance of getting people that are going to agree. But it's amazing to me how much when in the atheist community, when you say something like that, how much you will get friends. It is a very interesting and odd feeling to have all of a sudden all these people that are supporting you. And like you said, when I started first coming on when I was an atheist and I came on Facebook, I didn't know there was an atheist community.
Yeah,
I didn't know. Like, there's groups of people that don't believe what, you know. So. But it's been extremely empowering, you know, and I think that you know, there's a bunch of you're in Canada, and I got a bunch of friends in Canada, and you know Frank.
Probably lots you haven't met, but if you end up like hanging out in their city, you would be totally comfortable with them, right?
Oh, totally, yeah, definitely. Well, do you know Frank Flyman? Speaking of which, being from Vancouver, he's from Vancouver, Canada. Anyways, he's real popular also on Facebook, so that's why he's from Canada. That's why I thought maybe you'd heard of him. Well, he's got about almost 5,000 friends too from Canada, and he's from Vancouver. You should check him out. But anyways, I did an interview with him. But you being from Canada, I know that it's a place that I want to go to. I've already gone up there. I did a debate with. What's his name? Polotsky. I can't remember his first name now. But anyways, he's from Calgary.
Okay.
He's a famous theist from Calgary that interrupted the Calgary Stampede and got arrested and all this nonsense. So I have and I have appreciation because I like to me a lot of the Canadians' approach to atheism. Because I even though like I said, I'm really strong in what I don't believe and how I attack thinking, I really like the more friendly approach that, you know, Canadian atheists generally have. So I'm just saying, I like you said about going up there, I really feel connected because I already feel like, you know, we're on a more similar footing than I feel with sometimes with atheists in America. So, but I know that there's a lot more toxic, probably, you know, Christianity or religion that's making people more angry, I'm sure.
Exactly right. You know, there's definitely fundamentalism in Canada, but it's not so prominent, and it would never have a chance of electing politicians. You know, it's funny, in Canada, like, politicians get asked about their religious beliefs, and they're like, that's not appropriate to the political conversation. So, you know, I don't know if there's really like out atheist politicians, but it's just like God talk has been basically excluded from public policy and public service, and like such a relief to have every debate in an election be substantive and be about sort of policy and culture and society, and none of it is God wants this or God wants that. It's so different down here.
Must be nice. I don't no idea what that's like.
Who knows? You might even start liking government if you spend more time there.
And maybe in Canada. I don't like how America works. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. I gotta make a move pretty soon. But how are we doing here? Do you have more stuff that you meant to cover? Or?
So tell people about your CDs or stuff. Just tell us about you. Do a quick self-promotion or whatever you want. Go ahead, and then we can wrap it up.
All right. Speaking of wrap it up, I'll do it as a freestyle.
Okay.
All right. Let me introduce myself. My name is York.Brinkman. I'm always trying to engage with intellectual competition, conversation. I do shows sometimes in London, England, but I have to take it right back now like a soother, like a little baby sucks on my hometown was Vancouver. I'm Canadian and I'm as crazy as some of them always come. But then again, sometimes this freestyle's not rhymes I write. I try to excite your neurons. And yes, Canadians are polite, but we can still rock on the crazy rhythm. And we tend to infuse that with our atheism indeed. I'm just trying to rock it right now. I try to squeeze them, pull things out of their brains and always infiltrate with the reason. I'm spitting lyrics, always trying to make them smooth and never toxic. But I talk sick and I used to be agnostic. Before today, I didn't know the definition of agnostic, but now I do. I'm looking for a little bit of mental balance. Sometimes I do say, yes, your beliefs are invalid. Other times I say they're valid, maybe conceptually, except they're not really working for me empirically or intellectually, and try to critique them. I'm always speaking, talking about my uniqueness or maybe the uniqueness of hip-hop when I'm truth speaking. Indeed, I'm going to have to just blaze this. I take sips of concepts as I'm rocking for all of the atheist, and I'm not always talking like I'm a Canadian here with diplomatic immunity, but it has been kind of dope to connect with the skeptic community. Indeed, I'm just trying to be always blazing them, talking with Damien AtHope. This is the way that I adapt, though. I just have to maybe try to make my concepts factual, soaring over all the bull like I'm a pterodactyl. And yes, pterodactyls are actual. You can check the fossil record. You got to check it. I'm descended from something you would probably call a Homo erectus, or maybe an Australopithecus, a mad evolutionary, wondering how many scientific concepts you can carry. I might just adapt them into action, and some of my lyricism is how I just smash them. And wait, even if I make a little stuttering mistake over the rhythm, that's evolution. I'm introducing randomness into the system. I always take the piss. Sometimes with the conversations, I might be called an accommodationist, but I'm only trying to accommodate them so I can be friendly and convert them and get up in their circuits. You can see the way it's working. I'm just always an engaging person, but I am from Canada, which means I'm quite inhospitable. When I spit a flow, people listen and they're like, oh yes, his thinking is critical, so rational. I'm gonna have to just adapt to the flow, and if you got some fake beliefs, I'll probably have to smash that bull. So I'm gonna have to stop this freestyle long rhyme. It's York.Brinkman, Babrinkman. You can find me online.
Right on, man. Right on. So anyways, do you have any questions for me, and then we can wrap it up?
Well, I guess I'm curious. Your background's philosophy and psychology, and you really like put the philosophy into action in your conversations. So, do you feel like you're sowing seeds of people like getting curious in the sort of philosophical framework of what we believe, in addition to just like the specifics of it, or is that just your passion and you just want to bring it to the table?
It's my passion, and it's also a thing I know that I can give people that is a tool that doesn't need me. It is something they can use also against anything. It's something that can inspire their life. It's something that's sharp as a knife. It's something that cuts with the bull. It's something that even is full. It has the sustaining quality of that which is true. It always is there, and it's ready for you. We like to say that we don't know what's up, but you know the truth. And that is what's up.
Brat, was this your first freestyle cypher interview right here?
Yeah, it was. But I'm from California, like I said. It ain't like it's new to me, you know. But anyways, I really thank you. I really appreciate it, and I think that we're probably a lot closer than you think, and maybe closer than I think. But this is the truth. Is I do believe that you and me have the same goal, and that is truth, and that I will always respect.
Likewise, man. It was a great conversation. I appreciate you bringing me in and, sharing your fans with me and the ideas I'm bringing to the table. And I hope they like the music if they have a chance to listen to it.
Right on. Well, take care.
All right, man. We'll talk again soon.
Bye.
Peace out.